But you know what, just before I get started, I just want to show you the view that I have, because I'm not really going to be able to show this while I'm recording the video, but just to show you just this gorgeous area that I'm in right now. There's this wonderful path that goes all the way up the mountain, up to the top here. And it just keeps going up and up and up. Anyway, let's get into the video. Hey, what's up? I'm Rafael di Furia, aka Rafi D is me, and I am back at it again on another beautiful Friday night. Okay, may not be night, but you get what I mean. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about a subject that is no stranger to this channel: dual citizenship and moving to Italy. Of course, this is a subject that we're going to keep on talking about, so it's possible some of what you've heard today you may hear again in the future, but we'll try to keep it fresh. But specifically today, we're going to be talking about applying in Italy versus applying in America. I have spoken about this before, and at the end of this video, I'll be sure to include a card that will direct you to that video, so be sure to check that out also. But before we get too much deeper into this video, if you would like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on, and if you could also give this video a like, I'd really appreciate it, as it does help out the channel. Lately, I've been getting more and more questions about applying in America versus applying in Italy, and I got an email this week that I feel kind of sums up a lot of the emails that I've been getting recently, specifically about applying in the US versus applying in Italy. Just to go over part of the message. Hello, I've been watching your videos and you have been explaining about dual citizenship in the clearest way I've heard so far. Thank you. Glad you're finding these videos helpful. My grandfather's from Sicily and moved here, I'm assuming the US, when he was young, and I'm waiting to hear about his naturalization date before I can follow through with dual citizenship. However, I'm graduating college in May of 2020 and would like to move to Italy shortly after, and I wanted your opinion on whether I should begin the dual citizenship process in the US through the consulate, or if it would be better to get a work visa before I go to Italy and then bring all of my documents there instead. This process is already so stressful and I haven't even technically begun. Any information that you can provide would help immensely. Thank you very much, Shelby B. Shelby, hopefully this video today will answer a lot of your questions. I'm not going to say it'll give you the final answer of what you should do, but maybe it'll give you some answers that will help steer you in the direction that's best for you, because what may be good for one person may not be right for everybody. In general, overall, I would say it's always best to apply in Italy if it's possible for you, but it's not possible for everybody. And sometimes logistically, it's just too much of a headache and you can't really make it work out. But in other cases, sometimes it does work out. I think it is better for multiple reasons. One, it can be much faster depending on the comune. Unless you're in Rome, Milan, Florence, a big city, then it could take just as long as going through a consulate in America. If you're applying in a smaller place, then it might not take so long. It could take a year, could take a few months. It used to be that there were people who were able to accomplish this in a few weeks, but there were certain situations that were potentially less than legal, allegedly. But we won't get into that today, because that is a very complicated subject. But if you are applying in Italy, or a country that is not the country that you're from, you want to make sure you do things right. Also, I happen to have the unpopular opinion that I actually do think it should be required for people who are making this type of petition to be required to spend time in the country. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, but this is just, I can't help but feel this way. If you have the passport, I mean, this is a big deal. This is not just like you have a business card. A business card anybody can print off, but a passport that says that you belong to this country. It's more than just a passport. It's citizenship. This gives you the right to live and be a contributing member of society, and I think it's almost a wasted opportunity if you don't take advantage of that. But I realize living in the country is not for everybody, and some people may only be doing this as a gift to future generations, and I think giving the gift of citizenship to your children, your grandchildren, to give them the opportunity to be able to come back and live in Italy, that's priceless. I mean, how could you say no to a view like this? But as time goes on, I'll share probably more of my crazy, wacky opinions. And of course, as always, I think it's better to get in as soon as possible, because there could be some changes to the law at some point. We've already seen changes from December 2018 with Jure Matrimoni and other forms of citizenship through naturalization. The biggest changes namely being processing times and the B1 certification. This is a subject I spoke about briefly in my last week's video, so be sure to check out that video if you want to hear a little bit more about that. But that's besides the point. So let's get back into what we were talking about before. So if you have the possibility to apply in the country that you're living in or in Italy, It depends on your situation. I can't be the one that can give you an answer of what's the best thing and what's the worst thing, what's right for you, what's wrong for you. Because in the end, that's a decision that you need to make for yourself. But if you ask me, what did I do personally? I waited until I had citizenship to be able to come here. But now, after all of that time, there is that part of me that does kind of regret not coming sooner. But at the same time, because my process took so long, if I had stayed here, that would have been a whole lot of extra stress of trying to deal with, trying to remain in the country, not being able to work and support myself while in the country. And this is something that I would like to see, is that if people are coming here for applying for Jure Sanguinis, that they should be able to have the ability to work while they're here. But this gets into a whole different set of issues, a whole different discussion. So even though I did wait, while it was the right choice for me based on my situation, there is that part of me that wishes I had been able to come much sooner, because there was a lot of time that I didn't get to enjoy all of what this country has to offer and really enjoy the pizza, pasta, and amore. And by the way, of course, if you are wanting a pizza, pasta, and amore shirt, there's a link to t-shirts, baby onesies, and more down in the more info section below. So what I would say would be the key important information there is that Shelby is already considering moving to Italy, but it's not going to be for more than a year from now. So the first thing I would wonder is, when is the first available appointment to even be able to make the petition? I believe Houston has one of the shorter wait times, a year, 2 years. So that means if we're talking about a year or 2 years from now before even having the first appointment, you don't know if you have homework and extra documents that you have to require, or anything that you have to clarify, or anything that really needs to get done. We're already saying before you finish the process could be 2 to 4 years down the line. So is that an amount of time that works for you to be able to wait to come to Italy? If the answer is yes, and you really have all the time in the world and it doesn't matter to you, you're not in a rush, then I would say apply in your country of birth. And if the process keeps getting pushed back further and further, that could mean that it could get in the way of the visa that you have in that country and your ability to stay here in Italy. When I say that country, I mean this country, that country. Right there. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually still in Merano, the city where I live. This is just above the town, on one of the pathways behind the city, on the mountain. It's called the Tapaina Via del Tapaina. Not quite sure. Most people just call it by the German name here. And then also the other thing to take into account is the financial side of things. Can you afford to live in Italy during the process? Or do you need to be working while the process is going on? If the answer is that you do need some income coming in while you are waiting for this process to go on, applying in Italy may not necessarily be the right choice for you. However, in certain cases, it could work out. But of course, this all depends on what type of permesso do you have to actually be in the country. If you have the permesso di soggiorno for the purposes of getting citizenship, then you're not going to be able to work on that, in theory. I have heard of ways around this, but I'm only giving the information if you're playing by the book. There are technicalities which could potentially allow you to work online, but that's a subject I'm never going to go into on this channel. Well, more than likely never, unless there's a big change in the laws that all of a sudden changes the situation. But in Shelby's message, she mentioned about getting a work visa. This is actually a potential way of coming into the country. This is actually a possible way of staying in the country. And if you can get the permesso di soggiorno for the purposes of working, then this is a whole different category. Then you potentially could actually apply in Italy and work at the same time for an Italian company or a European company, or in an ideal scenario, if it's a company that you already work for and they're transferring you to Italy, then you can basically keep your same job. But I would say that's probably a little bit less common, but it's not unheard of. So if you are working for a big multinational company, look into it. You might be able to look into getting a transfer and see if they will sponsor your visa, especially if you have a position that you are very specifically suited for. In general, to find a job that will sponsor a visa if you've never worked for them before, unless it's a very high position and you've got this amazing CV and you are the #1 top player in your field, then it may not be the easiest. What I would say is just go for it, try it, see what happens. Prego. So of course, this is the other thing to consider about work. What I would also say can make a big difference in applying in Italy is your level of Italian. If you don't speak Italian, then it is very unlikely you're going to be able to get through this by yourself. That's where a service provider would come in. There are service providers out there who can help you at the comune and help you to go through the whole process without needing to know Italian or to have an interpreter with you. But if you have an interpreter with you, you really need to know the situation. You really need to know the process. You need to know your documents better than the back of your own hand. And if you are applying in Italy, you also want to make sure that all of your documents are completely in order. If there are name discrepancies, that's something that could really hold things up. If there was a woman's name change, that can be quite confusing to a lot of clerks in Italy because it is not a common thing at all in Italy. It doesn't happen. Or if there's a mismatch of dates, you will want to be in a place where you can speak your own language, or at least in a place where you can speak the language of the consulate of the country that you're in. Because if there are any sort of inconsistencies or any little issues with your papers, you want to be able to verbally explain that as clearly as possible. The other thing to take into consideration is which comune will you be making your petition through. If it's a smaller place that doesn't have a lot of work going for it, that doesn't have a lot of migrants, and doesn't have a lot of people that are looking to come and reside there, then it'll probably be a little bit of a faster wait potentially, and especially if you're in the north of the country, it could be that the comune functions a little bit more smoothly. But it of course all depends on the comune and the clerks that you're dealing with, or clerk, because everywhere you go in the country is going to be a different story. There is one set of rules, but even though there's that singular set of rules that exists, everywhere you go, each clerk seems to have a different understanding of how those rules are supposed to be applied, even though there's only one way that those rules should be applied. So if you're going to a comune where they know the process well, or they have some familiarity with it, that will be easier for you. Or if you have to go to a comune where they don't know about the process, which is not uncommon, then you may have to go there and explain to them that not only is this legal, but it is possible, because there are many people in the country, many clerks around the country, that are unaware of this and think that this is completely impossible. I've heard of plenty of cases where people have gone into a comune, have brought all of their papers, but they didn't let the comune know ahead of time. So they just went in there and the comune said, no, you can't do this, but you really can. But even with all of this said, I would say it's still probably the fastest if you want to do it here in Italy rather than doing it somewhere abroad. But also I would say it's fastest if you can go to your ancestral comune if they can process your papers. But why ancestral comune? Because then you're not dealing with any middlemen. If you're applying in another comune that's not the comune where your family is from, or if you're applying in a consulate, then that consulate or comune will have to send the documents off to your ancestral comune, and then there will have to be communication between A and B before it gets to you, C. But if you apply in your ancestral comune, then it's just A to B. Direct communication. But I have seen cases where people have gone through a different comune and it's actually been a better choice than going through the ancestral comune, because the ancestral comune didn't know how to process the files, whereas the other comune was able to process everything and was able to transcribe everything that needed to be taken down and sent it off to the commune. But there are even cases where sometimes the ancestral commune might leave those papers on the desk for months at a time without even touching them. But that's something that could be whether you go through a commune or a consulate. And that's of course when having a professional involved could help you, especially if you don't speak Italian, to call up and say, hey, I just wanted to check to see if there was any update on this status, to call very nice with a big smile, and to see if there's any way to figure out an update. Because in general with this, there's no way to get updates. Once you've handed off your papers, that's it. It's a waiting game at that point. But if you're making a petition through the consulate and the consulate has already accepted your papers and accepted your petition, that's a pretty good sign that you'll probably have a successful case, but it doesn't guarantee anything, because the final answer could come down to the comune, or if you have name changes, it could come down to the police. And if you do have name changes, what name you're recognized by could be decided by the police as well. It's starting to rain, oh God. Thought I heard some thunder earlier. Should have just recorded inside today. Anyway, this is probably a really good time to wrap up. So if you would like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like, I'd really appreciate it, as it does help out the channel. And of course, a huge thank you to those of you who are helping to make videos like this possible on a monthly basis. And if you would also like to help make videos like this possible, you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon, or if you'd like to help out just one time, you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/support. And of course, as always, thank you for joining me on another beautiful Friday night. I am Rafael Di Furia, aka Rafi D is me, and I will see you all next Tuesday/Friday, maybe, hopefully, for sure Friday, hopefully Tuesday. Anyway, have a great weekend. Later.